Hi, I'm author Shelley, and I wanted to share chapter 1 of my book of Serpents and Wolves. I thought I'd read chapter 1 for you. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1, Ireland in the 16th Century. These shores are familiar to me, for I know them well. I was once a slave on these lands, tortured, beaten, brutalized, but I did not die. Watching the seas rage as I stood on the Irish shoreline, my boots covered in the wet sand. It was raining, and I did not bother to take cover, as I knew it would pass. Taking a breath of the last of my freedom, I turned to walk the distance to the village from which I had been summoned. Out of duty and obligation, I am here. If I'd ignored the call, Lord knows what would have happened. An old priest, afraid of what was in the woods, was the reason I was here. It was up to me to determine if what he feared was true. Had death returned to these Irish shores? Or was there another, unknown explanation yet to be revealed? Only time and revelation would tell. The sun had not made an appearance today, nor would it, as I could feel it setting as the moon began to rise. These old bones no longer felt the ache of the pain of the change. On the inside, I was centuries old, while the outside projected vitality. My dark hair unkept, my usual style, my clothing is worn and torn. I did not care. This life made me miserable, but I could not escape it. I've grown accustomed to the odd stares I'd received, told I had the face of a prince and the build of a man who worked his own fields. But the truth was far from what they saw. Little did they know, I spent my days drinking the monks out of their whiskey, although now I had developed a taste for the tequila and mezcals they distilled. I praised God for the Spanish conquest of the New World. If only King Henry had thought of doing it first, but Henry had only women on his mind, which I highly respected, of course, for now I would have to abide by the meager spirits offered here. Reaching the line of trees, I began to shed my clothes, wrapping them with my belt so the wind wouldn't blow them to the far corners, and I wouldn't have to go hunting for my discarded rags when I returned. Perhaps I'd be fortunate and have a woman greet me upon my return. It has happened once or twice, and I've always enjoyed my victories. My muscles began to flex and bend, a sensation I had become used to over centuries. Luckily, the amount of whiskey and tequila I drank throughout the days made my body numb to the pain. My human mind faded as the wolf became dominant. It was easier for me to separate the two entities, rather than believe myself to be a murderous bastard. But I'm always in control, always aware. As the wolf, I'm able to easily move around the woods quietly, sensitive to the smells of my surroundings and the dangers awaiting my prey. Fairly soon, I'm on the trail of a familiar scent, one in which I have not tracked in hundreds of years, yet it always smelt the same: mud, wax, and blood, with a poignant mixture of fear and pleasure. The source of the scent was close now, very close. Yards away was a congregation of druids encircling an altar, their human sacrifice placed atop, fully awake and aware of what was about to happen. She was a fair girl, young, pure, and easy to manipulate. She was not crying or calling for help, which led me to believe she was unaware of what they were about to use her body for. I could wait. Walk away. I was called only to investigate and determine if there was a need for interference. Let Michael execute punishment for once and have him sanction what would take place here. But it could never be Michael. Michael took pleasure in addressing me as the man with the dark calling. "Patrick," he said, and always with a smile, "this gift was bestowed upon you and you alone." Therefore it was left to me to hunt and kill druids. Hunt and kill, as if the two could ever be separated. Only druids. That was the law I had to abide by, the law that governed this curse, with a leeway for taking the lives of others if absolutely necessary, and at times it was necessary. I turned, ready to walk away, but I smelt a new scent in the air, which caused me to hesitate. The smell of a holy man. The smell of that of a sanctimonious ass, trailed by incense and the rattle of a rosary. Father Jacoby was nearby, but of course he was. He was always trying to provide a salvation, especially for the damned. He would not be met here with welcome grace, for this was no place for a man of God. But Father Jacoby was the reason I was here. I cannot leave him here in these woods, unprotected, however much I wanted to. Damn him! "In the name of God, I command you to stop!" Father Jacoby's voice rose with each pressing word as he bravely stood across from the Druids with rosary and Bible in hand. "Your God does not command over us," the Druid said. "We gave him up long ago." Laughter trailed amongst them as they eyed the priest eagerly. The girl on the altar began to squirm, becoming uncomfortable with what was taking place. She sat up, but one of the Druids sharply pushed her back and held her down by pressing hard against her shoulders. "Wait," a Druid said to the others. "The offering of this misguided priest will be more satisfying than that of this girl." He withdrew a dagger from his robes. Father Jacoby had not noticed that some of the Druids had quietly encircled him. As he stood with his weathered Bible clutched in his hands, he held it tightly, as if presenting it was all the protection he would ever need. But Father Jacoby was powerless here. The girl began to cry, which caused Father Jacoby to press forward. "Release her now," he demanded. Jacoby let out a cry of surprise as a powerful arm encircled his neck and a dagger rose sharply against his throat. "Let's not waste a drop of your blood on the grass, Father." The words breathed heavily against his ear. "I'll be sure to save some of it for your God." "This goes against God," Father Jacoby strained to free himself. "You're condemning your souls to damnation." They laid him across the altar, all the while the dagger pressed tightly against his throat. The smell of blood penetrated the air as the blade continued to cut against his skin. A low howl penetrated from deep within my lungs. My legs brought me swiftly across the distance of our separation, and I launched over the altar. I clenched the neck of the Druid between my teeth as my jaw latched on and would not relent. His throat ripped and ragged as his head decapitated from his shoulders, the blood splashing my eyes but not hindering my vision. My hind legs propelled me from his chest, and within seconds I was on the next Druid, who raised his dagger for protection. Screams of agony fashioned forth from the Druids as they began to transform around me. The howls they made as they turned were torturous as pain raked their contorted bodies. I knew the Druids would turn into wolves, but that did not concern me. This was not the first time I had to chase these snakes from these isles. They had sworn to return. They had sworn to kill me, and they might have succeeded if that bastard Michael hadn't interceded on that faithful day so long ago. The howls of the unholy creatures filled the space around us as a wolf jumped on me. 2, then 3. The Druids' wolf forms were half the size of my own, as were their teeth and claws. My coat was as dark as a moonless night, my eyes even more ominous. To look within my eyes could cause one to go mad, as the darkest part of my soul reflected back at them. With razor-sharp claws, I tore into their hides, ripping them apart as my jaw aimed for their throats. A werewolf's head needs to be torn from its body to be killed. It didn't matter how the method was done, just as long as they couldn't use a resurrection spell to bring their numbers back from the dead. The remaining living Druids fled from me in both wolf and human forms, swearing to return as they fled. I didn't bother to give chase, for I knew I would see them again. Their numbers would only continue to increase. There were always more of them, and that is why I would never find peace. Watching them flee, I knew my return to these isles would no longer be a secret. They would know I have returned, and if they didn't know who or what I was, then they were fools. Slowly and with aching movements, Father Jacoby rose from the altar. Fighting off these vile snakes is a task for a young man, his hand massaging his lower back to ease the building pressure found there. I shall endeavor to leave this task to you now that you've returned. I am far older than you, priest. Remaining in wolf form, I jumped onto the altar to look into the priest's eyes. "I have answered your summons," I said bitterly, speaking to him through my inner voice, yet he answered me aloud. "I'm sorry for that," Father Jacoby said with a heavy heart. "Their numbers have outgrown what I can handle. I had always been able to steer my flock away from these devils, but each day more and more of my people are starving, and as their children starve, they turn a deaf ear to the words of Scripture. Your flock has lost, Father." Yet I knew he would not hear of it. I've seen this before. I knew what was going to happen, and I pitied Father Jacoby, for even now he was in denial. He has no idea what he has done to his flock when he summoned me with his prayers, for there was one proficiency I excelled at, and that was to rid the land of Druids. Father Jacoby's humble congregation was overgrown with them. "I cannot hold this evil back on my own," Father Jacoby said, confirming my belief that he was in denial, a forlorn glimpse in blue eyes as he used the sleeve of his robe to wipe at his brow. I prayed to the Archangel Michael. to send us one who had fought so valiantly against these monsters once before. He had answered my prayers by sending you to us. You have freed these isles. I couldn't hold back my rage. And by doing so, you have cursed me once more. The venom in my voice caused Father Jacoby to take a few steps away from me, tripping over the hem of his robe and landing on his bottom. The look of fear in his eyes was evident. Leaping over him, I fled. Yes, I would play the role of the dutiful servant, but I was not going to listen to his praises any longer. I was brought to these lands as a slave centuries ago, captured by the Irish no less. I was, and I remain cursed. It was my duty to answer and serve, a calling I would gladly pass on, but Michael had told me this dark calling was my sacred duty, and one I could not ever relinquish. Patrick Blakesley, this is who you are destined to be. I thought back to the day I had laid dying, and Michael found me. We both knew I was near death. I had chased the remaining druids from Ireland, and I took the lives of the one who had refused to leave. These had been their lands, but with the arrival of Christianity, it brought the end to their way of life. You will not die today, Patrick Blakesley. Michael was proud of what I had done. He believed that I should be proud to serve. No, I forced the word through my bloody mouth, but he would not hear me. This is your destiny, Blakesley, the Black Wolf. The light of the Archangel Michael filled me, and instead of death, I found life. My wounds healed. My ravaged body, which had been too weak to continue, now revived. No, I whispered once more, but Michael faded from sight. I cursed. Then I went in search of a drink, and I have been drinking ever since. May God protect the poor bastard who stumbled across Michael's path, and may Michael protect the poor bastard who stumbles across mine. If you'd like to learn more about my book, you can pick up a copy at the Book Dragon, located at 6 West Row, Stockton-on-Tees, or you can visit their online shop at thebookdragon.co.uk. Thank you.